Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Zodcast. And being that it's Halloween time, I wanted to show this discovery made by Sepher about the Zodiac's infamous Halloween card that was, of course, sent to Paul Avery back in 1970. So what he has pointed out here is, if you look at the image on the screen of the Halloween card, you see three different letters that are circled, and the first one is D by an exclamation mark in doomed, and then you have the O last letter in boo there right in front of an exclamation mark, and then you have the Z at the bottom right corner that has a dot by it. Well, if you rotate that Z, it'll make an N, and then it'll look like an exclamation mark. So there you have three letters followed by either the dots or exclamation marks, depending what you do with that Z. And of course, what does that spell? It spells dawn. D-O, and then rotate the Z and it becomes an N and an exclamation mark by the dot. So that's a great find by Sepher, and I think that could definitely be what he's trying to say there. Is another clue to his name. And this, of course, makes me think of the cover to the Pines card and the Zodiac written on the top left of the Pines card. And here again is an image of that. And you see the Z at the top left. It's done in heavier writing to make it stand out a little more bold. And then you have the D that's touched by the top point of the Zodiac's cross circle logo. So what does that spell backwards? It's pointing you to start with the D and go to the O, and then the N spells dawn. And of course this says ABC on it, and that makes me think that is also a clue to the fact that the Agatha Christie book ABC Murders was a definite inspiration for the Zodiac crimes. If you read the book by Agatha Christie, you'll see so many similarities between the Zodiac crimes and that particular book. And of course, Don Chaney points that out, and his name was Arthur Leigh Allen, that's one of the things that Arthur Leigh Allen was inspired by. And of course, Allen never really names the book, but don't worry, Don's going to tell you the name of the book, and that's ABC Murders. And speaking of the aforementioned Arthur Leigh Allen, this was a poll taken of Zodiac suspects on a YouTube channel called Bad Things True Crime, and Arthur Leigh Allen is still in the lead here in this poll at 39%. Of course, this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek because you have Ted Cruz down here at 28%, of course, and that's a joke, but people still love it, especially people that don't know the case that well. But it's interesting to point out that Arthur Leigh Allen is still the prime suspect in this case, despite the DNA, despite the fingerprints, despite anything else that points against him. He's still the top suspect in this case. Well, why? Because the circumstantial evidence is still extremely strong for Allen. It's not just the movie and the book by Fincher and Graysmith. It's all things for Arthur Leigh Allen. So also here you see Gary Francis' post, which is, of course, we all believe is terrible. William McDuff Andrew, of course, that's Mike Morford's suspect. Paul Doerr, the newest suspect in the Zodiac case, comes from author Jared Kobeck and his two new books, and he was definitely the hot flavor on Reddit, of course, everything going on with Doerr, and I'll talk about him a little bit more. But he doesn't even, with everything behind him and the new media coming out for Doerr, he still can't pass up Allen on this poll. And for good reason, because Allen is still the guy to beat. He's still the prime suspect in this case, which, to me, has always said he does have a part in this. And I couldn't help but look at some of the comments, and this is from Jamie Wilson. He says, none, or maybe Don Chaney. So, of course, I had to add that, but there was, I think, 3 or 4 that were sharing Jamie's sentiments. And then this person here, Terry Conley, is, of course, talking about Arthur Leigh Allen. He said, the watch sealed it for me. If it wasn't him, it was someone close to him. Heavy emphasis on it was someone close to him, Terry. So, yes, the watch is such a compelling piece because it's one of the rare cases where the cross circle logo and the name Zodiac come together, which is very rare no matter how you look at it. Those watches were not that common. Yeah, you could see an ad for the Zodiac watch here and there, and it was advertised to skin divers, but the watch was pretty expensive. They still sell Zodiac wristwatches. They're around $600 to $800, and I think back in the day they were around $150, $200 in the early 70s, late 60s, so that was still a pretty expensive watch even back then, and it was not, they were not as common as people will lead you to believe. So going back to the new suspect, Paul Doerr, just a little bit, this was a comment left on Reddit, which Sometimes you get good stuff from Reddit. You do. I mean, I credit Reddit for me finding the Cheney Paradise connection because someone put out the idea that that could have been a surname, which, of course, in Cheney's case, it turned out to be. But this person goes under the name No Prize 4655, and it says, "I'm not faulting Kobach at all. I think he did a good job getting as much info as he could to build a compelling case of coincidence and circumstance for Doerr to be a POI. But all amateur investigators hit a wall eventually because they don't have access to actual evidence nor the power to compel discovery from anyone under suspicion. Kobach took it as far as he could. The issue isn't with him, it's with other amateurs reading his work and confusing circumstance and coincidence with evidence. Doerr is a decent POI from what I've seen. There's nothing yet to make him a suspect. It will take LE following up on Kobach's work to build an actual case against Doerr in order to graduate him to that status. Until that happens, he is just an interesting person." That is very well stated. And that applies to anybody, even me. You know, like you do get to a place to where you're finding a lot of great evidence, maybe nothing pointing against someone, and you just get it, you take it so far, you know, and then all you can do is be patient and wait and step back, take a break from it, maybe, you know, do something else like I do. I do other cases. I'm not 100% dedicated to Zodiac, but it's definitely my top case. But you with any suspect, you just can take it so far, and then you just look for the really hard pieces. You look at your email from other people that follow your work that come up with things like Sepher and many others I work with. Tony Donnelly, Neil Arnold coming up with some great stuff. Just so many things. Ned. Obviously coming up with new things Zodiac every week. So you just stay patient and keep learning about what comes in. And I'm definitely interested in any new suspect that comes up. You have to know what's out there, especially if you're putting forward a theory or a suspect. So that's just where I am. So trying to tie in these next couple of thoughts here is one is when they were talking about Paul Doerr a lot on Reddit. People were so caught up in it, they were saying that there's better circumstantial evidence for Doerr than Arthur Leigh Allen. Well, of course, in my opinion, that's ludicrous. It just is. I mean, Allen has phenomenal circumstantial evidence, and you know everybody already knows what that is. I don't need to say it all, but I don't think Allen was known to misspell words for comedic effect, just like the Zodiac did before the crimes. Like I said, Allen had the Zodiac wristwatch he got for Christmas 1967. That early, he had the watch way before Lake Herman Road. I mean, those two alone are strong. But what's the strongest thing for Allen? And that is that he was questioned by Detective John Lynch just days after the Lake Berryessa attack. Allen has been connected to these crimes since September of 1969. Actually, it might have been early October when they first questioned Allen. That was, of course, before the Paul Stein attack. But you can't beat that for circumstance. The guy was already being looked at is being connected to these crimes before the fourth canonical crime even happened. So that's a tough mountain to climb over. So I think people saying that Doerr has better circumstantial evidence than Allen is getting ahead of your skis a little bit. And I wanted to read this comment from a guy named Eddie TYOS on Reddit. It says, "I'm probably going to get downvoted for this, but here goes. ALA wasn't chosen out of the clear blue sky. The cops either got a tip from someone who suspected his involvement, or he was known to police as someone who was involved in criminal activity, so they followed up with the usual suspects." And he goes on to say, ALA was cleared on fingerprints from Stein's cab, a palm print from the 74 Exorcist letter, and DNA from the 1978 letter that the FBI and SFPD believe Toschi wrote. I think he's wrong about that last comment. The DNA that they're using, it came from actually two of the letters, from my understanding, that came in after the Stein murder. Definitely one that they got the DNA from the outside of the stamp. I think both were definitely from the outside, but I think it's those letters, not the 78 letter. He goes on, he wasn't cleared from Berryessa. In fact, investigators suspected him. The longer I study this case, the more I see the issue being the police trying to find one killer to fit all the crimes. Could ALA have done the LB killing and Stein was completely unrelated robbery that turned into a murder? I think it's possible. He's definitely onto the right track here, at least, with these comments, because they always were trying to tie in all four canonical crimes to one killer. And I even hold out the possibility that at least Lake Herman Road or Blue Rock Springs May have been somebody else. I don't think they were, but they could have been. I mean, Berryessa for sure. That is Zodiac wearing the outfit, wearing the cross circle logo. People could call that a copycat, but that's actually the original. How did we know that that just wasn't the Zodiac first doing a crime to cement taking credit for Lake Herman Road or Blue Rock Springs? We will never know the answers to that, but I truly believe that Stein and Lake Berryessa were definitely Zodiac. Of course, Stein, you have the bloody piece of shirt being mailed in to tie him to the crime, so that one's really hard to get around. So circling back to Allen being questioned so soon after the Lake Berryessa attack, of course, I've always said I believe Don Chaney put that tip in there. And probably Allen knew about it because Allen seemed to be expecting to be questioned in this case. I mean, Allen, the guy that fell apart when he lost his job at Valley Springs, crying in the hallways, was cool as a cucumber when being questioned about these crimes. Not just when Lynch first questioned him, but when Toschi and company from the SFPD questioned him. He's cool as a cucumber. Why? Because he knows they're coming. Several people on this thread that they were talking about Allen again suspected it could have been Chaney that put that tip in there. And I fully agree. I mean, there's really no reason other than Allen being a creepy guy why he turns up being questioned in these crimes. They did not have the capacity just after Lake Berryessa to question every creepy guy living in Vallejo. They just didn't. It's startling that Allen is on the radar that soon, and that's really hard to get around. In the book Zodiac by Gray Smith, it mentions this tip from that, how John Lynch got the tip, and they think he said that he got the tip by letter. And of course, we know years later Lynch could not remember who put the tip in, and they just knew that it was anonymous. But he did say that the tip came in by letter. But it does make the comment here. It says, Allen would not have been a suspect until 71. The Vallejo PD suspected that the sister-in-law had turned him into police as a Zodiac suspect. Of course, the sister-in-law was, of course, Karen Allen, the wife of Arthur Leigh Allen's brother, Ron. And that just doesn't make any sense to me why Karen Allen would have turned him in. I don't think she got along with him so well, but why is she going to turn him in for possibly being the killer when he was just a creepy guy at that point? There was really nothing in Arthur Leigh Allen's background other than this scuffle with Ralph Spinelli that would lead you to believe that he was an actual killer. So I don't really believe that Karen Allen would have been the one putting in that tip. It just makes no sense. So where do I think Gray Smith got that idea to put that in there about Karen Allen? From Chaney, of course. He's the one that probably said, oh, it was his sister. It was Karen. She didn't get along with him. She's probably the one that put the tip in. And there's probably no concrete evidence that Vallejo PD ever believed that it was Karen Allen. Of course, I've never seen it. If that exists, someone please send it to me. But those are my thoughts for now. Thanks for tuning in.